Oh, because my door's not shut. Okay, I think we're live on YouTube now.
Hold on. We on?
I think so, yeah. I can't see. Let me just go into our YouTube channel and see.
Okay.
Oh,
so this is not gonna be on Facebook?
Nope. Oh, yeah, we're on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So for anybody just tuning in.
I don't think anybody even follows us on YouTube.
Yeah, they do. We have followers on our channel.
Well, this is gonna be a
you know what? This will be our experiment.
okay. Yeah, well, okay. YouTube live.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, look at this, huh?
We'll share that on Facebook again.
Yep.
So we'll see how many people we get over there.
Mhm.
I've heard other people say that they've had difficulties with like Facebook and they've just all out left the platform for using it for like live events and stuff because there's just like too many like whatever with it.
No, well, that's okay.
So just search for Civil War Breakfast Club. I mean, I think most people have YouTube. They just don't use it as much as like a live stream platform, I guess. But hey, I'm willing to try. I'm willing to try it for us.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
You know?
Why not?
Yeah. So hopefully some people come in and join us here.
Mm-hmm.
Basically the same as Facebook Live, like same format.
Yeah, but
there we are. Oh, there's 3 people watching. So
really? Well, this is a
oh, hey, we got there's a guy in here. He said, "Hey guys, longtime podcast listener, love your breakdowns." Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is
cool.
So anybody in here. This is our first time doing a live on YouTube. Usually we do these on Facebook, but Facebook didn't want to cooperate this morning. So
well, somebody spelled copy on the keyboard apparently, and so here we are. So
screw it. Let's try YouTube this morning because we also know that not everybody is on Facebook either. I think more people are moving away from the platform, but anyway, here we are.
Who the hell knows? Who knows? So now I guess it's YouTube now. Okay, well, whatever.
Yep. Hey, Ski's on here.
Oh, what's up, Ski? Yeah, I think put it this way, it took us so long to sign on this morning. There's actually a goal scored in that soccer game. That's how long it's been. Wow, goodness gracious. I was clean shaven when we signed on. So anyway, so what's going on? What's good to see people coming on this. So hopefully people jump on. I never thought,
Hey, Barbara. Yeah, YouTube is we just never used it before because we didn't think there was as many people on there, but we were forced to this morning. So, I mean, I wish there was a time when you could go on both Facebook and YouTube at the same time, but you can't do that with Zoom. And I don't think Facebook allows for that anymore.
No, that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. So that's, so maybe we'll mix it up a little bit. Facebook Live was always our jam for a while.
Yeah.
Hopefully people will come over and do that. So
yeah, but I know we do have like people on YouTube. So the Blue Jacket said, "Hey, they're heading to the German club to work, listening in the car." Oh, very cool. Well, yeah. So again, anybody who's never joined us for our Facebook Lives are basically just an extension of our podcast where we never have a set topic. We haven't had a new episode in a few weeks, but we just had the anniversary of the Battle of Franklin. So that was what we talked about on our roundtable on Wednesday night, and that was a really interesting discussion, I thought.
No, it's great to do those roundtables.
Yeah.
Because people bring in different perspectives, and the trap with this, and we see with a lot of people, is people seem so righteous, right? What they think is what they think, and that's the way it is. But it's good though, because people can come from all perspectives, whether you support the North or the South, whether you like a general, hate this guy, love that guy. All opinions are always welcome at that. And that's why you have to have it though. Because I mean, the way you learn is by different people's opinions. At least for me anyway, hell do I know, but that's what I think. And too many people, I think, it's so set in their ways and they don't want to realize that, well, maybe I've got to rethink something I thought my entire life. But you know what though? Sometimes it comes out, it works out well. So, but that's good. So yeah, so it's the same thing for us. So how's everything going for you?
Good. I enjoyed like I said, I enjoyed the discussion. This is a little bit different format for us this morning, but I'm glad we're giving it a try. And I do agree with you. Like, I learn a lot from other people, like, the friends we've made, just doing this podcast. Like, everybody's got a different opinion. Everybody's got a reason why they study somebody. And those reasons are, I always find those reasons so interesting. But, the other thing too, not just learning from other people, but by reading a wide variety too.
No, there's
the one thing that it's like, you can't just read one book and base your opinion of a battle or a person off that, even if it's a book that, might not necessarily have a great reputation. Like, for instance, Douglas Southall Freedom, his biography about Lee is very pro Lee, right? Like, he fell in love with the subject matter, but it's still got a place in the literature.
No, I've read a lot of Freeman stuff, his Lee book, Lee's Lieutenants, and it's a different perspective, but it's like anything else. You can see, we see this all the time. People who will read a specific book, and it's not just Freeman, but it could be anybody. It could be Hess, it could be Fonz, it could be Coddington. Whatever you read, sometimes you're going to read that one perspective and think that's the end all be all. And let's be honest, Mary, not everybody's like us. Everybody's a Civil War loser like we are, who reads this stuff all the time. I mean, admittedly, it is. So for the average person, you read this stuff, and most people don't know the difference between Robert E. Lee and Sarah Lee, right? Oh yeah,
or they have like such a base level, which is great. Base level is fine, but you have to kind of go outside that. Morning, MJ. Morning, David. Not working on Facebook. No, Facebook was being a brat this morning, so we were like,
Facebook has issues this morning. Somebody pulled the plug.
And maybe reach some people that don't have Facebook, so they can come hang out with us too. So yeah, we appreciate everybody hopping on.
Yeah, what the hell? YouTube is a different thing. So yeah, I wasn't working. I saw MJ. We saw you jump on live last night. We were out doing some shenanigans in town last night. Otherwise, we would have jumped on. But so she had no problem last night. So maybe it's you, Mary. Maybe you screwed this whole thing up.
I don't know what's going on with.
Yeah, anyway.
Oh, probably. One listener or one person on here said, "Love the Ringgold Gap. Great breakdown. I enjoy your takes and the humor is perfect." Well, thank you very much.
We'll appreciate that. That's from kind of you. Ringgold is great because it's one of those few places where it's the end of one campaign and the beginning of the other. It's the end of that Chattanooga campaign, and it brings the Atlanta campaign at the beginning. So it's right at the beginning. And what's neat about it too is you talk a lot about Joseph Hooker. And you think about Hooker, you automatically you're going to think about Chancellorsville. It just is. But if you look at the actual breakdown, Ringgold Gap is right up there with one of his biggest mistakes, because I mean, and we've said this many times, Mary, that what if Hooker was not relieved after Chancellorsville and he fought the Gettysburg campaign? The way he fought Ringgold's is a perfect idea of what Gettysburg would have looked like, assuming there would have been a battle in Gettysburg. You would have seen an impulsive Joseph Hooker who would have attacked, jumped with both feet in without his support being up. And we saw in Gettysburg how the left, the first, the third, the 11th, they came in the left wing, followed by the rest of the armies. He would have gone full banana all the way in and played right into Lee's hands. So you see, So for people saying, well, how Gettysburg would have played itself out, look at Ringgold. Ringgold is life imitating art of what Gettysburg would have been like if George Meade had not taken over from Hooker. Yeah. So he, for those who don't know the Ringgold story, you've got a situation where Bragg is falling back after Missionary Ridge and Lookout Mountain. He's going to fall back to Dalton, Georgia. He's going to need that one division to kind of stop the oncoming army, which is going to be Joseph Hooker. Yeah. 16,000 guys versus 4,200 guys. 4-to-1 ratio. So doing the math, Mary. I don't know why I did 5 figures, but it's four figures. It's tough to do that.
My math skills are rubbing off on you somehow?
Let's hope not for that. But you're going to need a guy who's going to basically provide that speed bump. Now they're lucky they got those mountains, right there in Ringgold, to slow them down. But because of what Patrick Claiborne does, he's going to allow Bragg's guys to escape to Dalton for the Army of Tennessee to live to fight another day, which of course is going to end up getting destroyed eventually.
Like Hood, a year later, it's going to get destroyed. Yeah, destroyed by. If we're going to be like, I mean, yes, it was Hood who destroyed the AOT. Like, I mean, that's just my opinion, but reading like just how things went for that army. David mentions that a great book for Ringgold Gap is All Hell Can't Stop Them. It's part of the Emerging Civil War series. We definitely agree. That was my main resource. That and the Pat Claiborne biography were the two things that we used to research for the episode. And that book is written by, I believe it's David Powell. Right. Really great. Emerging Civil War is great, like little books, and they often have tours in them as well. So All Hell Can't Stop Them is about not just Ringgold Gap, but the battle for Missionary Ridge too. So the battles in the Chattanooga campaign. And it's, you read it in a weekend kind of thing, but it's got great details in it. And like I said, the driving tours are in there too. And there's also a book just about Lookout Mountain as well. I think that one is written also by David Powell, but they've got books about everything like Gettysburg and Antietam. Even the lesser known, I know they've got one, I think it's written by Sarah K. I'm going to butcher her last name, Barrel. She wrote a book for Emerging Civil War about the Battle of Newmarket, I think. Yeah. Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Adam. Yeah, Adam said he loves the Emerging Civil War books too. David, it is too early for Hood. Now I need whiskey. Well, we're having bourbon this morning, so.
Good call. Good call.
A good drink. Bourbon and orange juice. Who knew? Maple syrup.
Yeah, it's good. Have you ever thought about Meade after Gettysburg and just before Grant took over? Go Eagles! Obviously a Boston College fan. How you doing? But yeah, we talked a lot about that because we've said many times Grant. I mean, he really didn't take. He did take over to a point, and it's a fun conversation we have all the time about. What do you think about Meade getting fired? And that gets you going, right?
Oh,
but no. But he was right guy at the right time, and I would always refer people to Kent Masterson Brown's book on the retreat from Gettysburg, which is in my opinion, the best book ever written about Gettysburg. And we've had him on here. He's a good dude. Yep. He's in Gettysburg today, Mary. I don't know if you know that. He's actually in Gettysburg today. Yeah. If you're in the Gettysburg area, go to the Heritage. You can go see him. Go tell him that Howard sent you, as we always say to people. He's a good dude. But he does a good job with that. In that duration between Gettysburg and when Grant takes over, that kind of that heading into that late fall, winter time, is more of that stabilization, because people don't realize the beat down the Union Army took up to Gettysburg. It wasn't like they just beat the hell out of them and they just sat around and did some whittling for a while. They had to recoup for a bit. Then when Grant's going to come over east, that Overland campaign, and he's going to kind of oversee them. I mean, he's not really take over, but he's kind of there. So
yeah, he's like
overall commander.
Yeah, Blue Jacket said Meade was the assistant to the regional
he was
manager. That's exactly.
He was the Dwight Schrute of that. And but you can see the fingerprints of Overland campaign that it was all Grant, though. It was. And when you had that situation, Mary, where we talked before heading into the Battle of Yellow Tavern, where Jeb Stuart wasn't his best day, right?
No, Jeb Stuart that was probably his worst day ever.
Right. You have the great Phil Sheridan, Mary, who's going to want to take his cavalry. He's going to want to go chase Jeb Stuart against Meade's wishes, but Grant says, go take all the cavalry. We don't need you sticking cavalry. So that shows who actually was in charge at that point. It was Grant. But Meade wasn't like fired or canned or anything like that. He still maintained an army, the Potomac thing.
No.
But it is fun to
do. You think like Sheridan, though? I mean, I think it turned out to be a good decision in the end, obviously on the part of Grant to do that. But the way Sheridan went about it was like typical Sheridan. He's like Grant's little lapdog. Like Sheridan can do no wrong, basically. And I just I don't know. Sheridan just bothers me.
Sheridan sucks. He does.
Meade is underrated. Yeah, we would agree. David reference shot. Hey, Roger. Never too early.
Roger, you're going back to Disney again, huh? Wow, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, Meade is definitely underrated. David said the read Meade at Gettysburg, but yeah, Kent Masterson Brown. That's another good one too, which we've had him on talk about that one too.
No, he's a good dude. We've had him on a couple times when we've done our book clubs, and every time we say, "Kent, stay on after everybody jumps off,"
Yeah,
he goes,
he
"Okay," and then
leaves.
he
It's so
jumps off
funny.
every single thing.
He's so funny that way.
It's pretty funny. But his mead book is fantastic.
Yeah.
Now I'm not gonna lie to you, Mary. He's a little tough on my boy Sickles.
He is, but that's and I mean, we were talking about this with some of our friends. Like, the great thing about history is how fluid it is, how you can change your opinion, how you can have you can have a differing opinion and that opinion can change. But, Jim, and because we talked to Jim Hessler about this before too, when he was on to talk to us about Sickles, Jim and Kent are clearly very good friends and they respect each other, including the differing opinions on Dan Sickles. I mean, I am team Mead, but when it comes to Sickles at Gettysburg, I agree with what he did. I understand why. It was because of, not because of the cannons at Hazel Grove from Chancellorsville. It was more so what happened to O.O. Howard, that Sickles didn't want to get himself into the same position that Howard had been in. And I mean, it's not, and that whole Chancellorsville thing is not just in, Howard's head and Sickles' head as they go into Gettysburg. It's in every single commanding general's head that this could have happened to any of us.
And admittedly, I mean, yeah, I thought of this too. I assumed, Sickles' move to the Peach Orchard was his Hazel Grove experience, because it's an easy way to jump from A to B.
Yeah.
But when you look at the real details of Gettysburg, it was funny when we had Hessler that time. Was I think he kind of came on expecting a battle with Sickles, because and when he realized
that's what you and I understand that, because that's how I kind of go into any time I bring up Howard. It's like, okay, what kind of battle am I going to be fighting this time?
Yeah.
But it wasn't. I mean, we all were in agreement about Uncle Dan, that he probably.
And I think he was kind of surprised. But when you look at and the one thing he and I disagreed about is that Charles Payne map.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you believe the Payne map, and allegedly this is one of those great debates with Gettysburg. There's been so many good ones. Was that original placement of the armies on that night going into after the 1st of July, right? And if you believe Charles Payne map, and so the history of the map was late on early morning on the 2nd, Charles Payne, Howard, Meade, they kind of reconnoitered a foggy, dark battlefield. This was the first time that Meade had seen it, and they sort of positioned the corps in a way along that Emmitsburg Road. So if you've been to Gettysburg, you know what I'm talking about, that long road where the monuments just stop, right?
Yeah.
Down by the Peach Orchard is, on the original map, is where the Sickles' 3rd Corps is going to be. Just to his left, okay, so it would be south now, would have been the 5th Corps or the 6th Corps, whoever got there first. And because it all didn't work out that way, and the fact that Meade was under the impression that, per Meade, that they still could have gone an offensive, he moved his corps up to where he thought he was supposed to be per that map. And that's the great debate, okay? There was a ranger guy we know. He's not a ranger anymore, named Chuck Teague. And he lives and dies by the Payne map. But he's kind of the one who, when I talked to him, that kind of made me think more about it. And when you look at it, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
And the other thing, to not to bash Meade here, was Sickles did try to get clarification on several occasions of where he was supposed to be, because he was getting conflicting orders. And the reason why I'm not going to rip on Meade here is because Meade had a lot of shit to worry about.
He had a lot of stuff going on. Right? They all did. And I mean, they're in kind of that fog of battle, figuratively, literally. And I mean, that is like, it's easy for us to armchair general the situation, but all of them had a lot going on that day. Hey, Andrea, everybody, there's a few people on here. Stand with Dan. That Eric Wittenberg has a Meade book coming out in 23. Inspire J said, "Are you ever thinking of doing a 27-part show on Gettysburg?"
Oh, I think that's been done.
I think that's been done. Patrick said, "Oh, Howard, the ghost of Chancellorsville will never forgive." Actually, it's the ghost of like historical memory. It really has got Howard badly, unfortunately, which, I mean, Howard has his best day. Nobody ever talks about it at Ezra Church.
No, I know.
And it's funny how that is. Like, I was thinking about this morning. So there's Ezra Church and there's Spring Hill. Like, I mean, Howard's not at Spring Hill, but you have Schofield and you have Howard, Schofield at Spring Hill. Schofield sneaks by Hood, but all we ever talk about is the disaster, that Army of Tennessee. Nobody ever seems to mention, maybe it was a good move on Schofield too, for being able to sneak by those guys. Just like people like, now Stephen D. Lee was I will not understand why Hood put him in charge that day, but anyway,
The
people say,
hero of Tupelo?
God, wasn't he running that campaign on his own? That was the media campaign he did where he was like, I won Tupelo, and everybody else was like, no, actually.
Well, that's the funny part
lost.
about it was he claims, he tells the papers they won Tupelo. They really lost Tupelo. So people think he's some kind of hero. And he had his days over there at Chickasaw against Sherman.
Yeah,
though.
that was
there he is right there. Howard,
yeah.
bad day for Sherman.
I got
But-
Howard today.
Oh, shocker. But no, it's good though, because I think Howard, we've said this a million times. Howard's a guy whose reputation has gone south in time when it was really high back then. We said this before. He was only 3 generals who got propped by Congress for Gettysburg.
Yeah. And Facebook the other day,
Hooker,
someone
Meade,
said that
Howard.
was only on Facebook. Somebody said the other day that was only politics, and I just rolled my eyes. Like,
Well, it's still, but
you know,
the only thing from a contemporary that I've read bad on Howard is from Hooker. Right.
Yeah.
When Hooker said that he was a woman in a soldier's uniform and he should wear a petticoat instead of a frock coat, and that he some of his men in the 11th Corps, when they were going into battle, he said, if you die, you'll go to heaven. And they're like, well, I'd rather you worry about my ass now than my ass in heaven.
Which
so I'd like to live, please. Right.
I can understand that.
Right. There is. But for the most part, he was praised for the most part. And I think as time goes on, and I think the myth, I don't want to say myth of Chancellorsville, and I'm not going to sit here and defend your boy Howard, but again, he was under the impression by Sickles that the Rebs were retreating.
Yeah.
But again, Von Gilsa was the only guy who really thought maybe it wasn't the case.
Yeah. Von
Gilsa
was the first guy to see Jackson break through, and David said like, it was so much more than Chancellorsville. Who would have expected Jackson to crash through the forest or Lee to split his already outnumbered army?
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
The other misconception with Howard is that he's got his corps flanked and routed at Gettysburg. When if you want to blame somebody, it's Carl Schurz.
Yeah, because Schurz is in charge as of the time that Howard takes over. When he finds out Reynolds is dead, the command passes to Carl Schurz. Right. So Schurz is thrown into that position. Everybody in his division ends up moving up. And they're in the fog of battle. So Schurz all of a sudden is in command of the 11th Corps, and guys that, where he was before, someone else has taken over there.
But even that's even that's debunked, because guys, from Gordon's men said that the 11th Corps at Gettysburg was the hardest fighting they ever saw in the war, and they absolutely did not just turn and run. The problem that the Schurz did, and by extent, Howard too, was he didn't provide a roadmap back to Cemetery Hill.
No,
and so you had guys like Schimmelfetting disappear. Exactly. But you know what though? You also had them send Coster's men up. Right.
Yeah.
And then he's going to leave Orland Smith back with Steinwehr around where the cemetery is now. But they did provide somewhat of a counteroffensive at the Brickyard too. So the history doesn't jive with the reputation. And the more you study it, the more you realize that Howard's definitely somebody who gets sullied. I think Sickles does too. I saw one of the comments about did Sickles drag his feet. It was kind of the opposite at Gettysburg, because he was put in a tough position, because he's told by the big man, George Meade, to stay where he is and protect our left flank up in Maryland. Yeah. He's getting orders from Howard now to send his men up because they need support. So what does he do? He does both. Yeah. He sends half of his men north to Gettysburg. Half he keeps there, which was kind of savvy of Sickles to do that. Yeah. Now, the problem with Sickles, though, was when he did get moving, he didn't put his wagons to the side like he was supposed to. He put them on the main road, so it kind of clogged that road up. Yeah, on town the Taneytown Road, and that's what got me going. I think that's probably where the dragging the feet reputation comes from. Yeah. But it's fun when you read this stuff. It just is, because
And you mentioned David said as the hero Gettysburg, one of the best the Federals had. Andrea Quinn said there are many like of course, my poor Barlow and his move on July the 1st. Most focus on that his command at Antietam and during the Overland campaign. She's wearing her Barlow t-shirt. That's awesome. Yeah, Andrea, she is part of the civil. The Facebook page is escaping me unfortunately now, but they do a really good Facebook page.
Yeah, no, she's a big Barlow person, obviously. But there's a lot. We've said this a million times. There's no sacred cows and there's no true goats. It really is. And what's neat about it is it's good. It's a double-edged sword. Is people tend to gravitate towards a specific person, whatever rank it happens to be, and you kind of learn, you kind of grow from that.
Yeah.
The danger, of course, is you mentioned Freeman earlier. You fall in love with your subject, and then it turns into a sports team thing where nobody can say a bad thing about them. You get so defensive. But it's good though, because it was everybody, it's two sides of every coin.
Yeah.
For every Lee at Gettysburg, you have a Lee at Chancellorsville. So you have the good and the bad, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Hey,
Caleb found us.
Yeah, so we had some problems there. The Canadian had some problems signing on today.
Yeah,
and then she started feeding me whiskey. So I don't know what the hell she's trying to kill me today, Caleb. I mean, maybe a tough time.
Yeah, and MJ said too many of these guys are one battle folks, and Zaxxon Hancock was a disaster at Ream Station. They're all good, they're all bad, which is what you just said. OO was also undersupplied at Gettysburg. If I recall, the AOP was in worse shape than Army of Northern Virginia because they booked it so quick and they couldn't keep up with supplies. But yeah, I think, and Ezra Church, like I think it was Tony mentioned, like Ezra Church never gets talked about. And that is when Howard has been in command of Army of the Tennessee for maybe, I don't know, just a few days at that point. Yeah. And he gets that command over Blackjack, which Blackjack was not very happy about that, which I can understand. Oh, Andrew said Civil War Chronicles, which he does with Chris Morano.
Yep, that's just. And she does that with Chris Morano. I didn't know that. Andrew, you did that with Morano?
I think
I know they're cousins. I didn't realize that he was part of that. It's very cool.
Yeah. And then
he was my realtor from the Gettysburg house. He's a great guy.
Cool. And Andrew said that she's got a new Barlow page called Beyond the Boy General, so I'll have to check that out. But I think Ezra Church is like, you always hear about like, oh, Stephen D. Lee did bad, and nobody wants to give Howard the credit for, he does really well at that battle. Those men had a tough fight. I remember when we recorded that episode, we talked about how many bullets weren't we able to find that source that said how many bullets were fired there? Like, so how many rounds were going a minute from the Federals?
When you look at even Pickett's charge, okay, when you figure 147 Confederate guns, 122 rebel Northern guns, 269 guns firing every 3 seconds or 30 seconds for 2 hours. How much metal was flying back and forth, and it's just amazing to think about. Just the visuals, just picture all this, the smoke and the fog. There's so much stuff going on with that, but it's really neat to think about. But again, it's pretty cool though. But I haven't thought, I'm sure there's been some studies about that, but you never know. But a lot of these guys,
Church, I remember we did talk about how many rounds per minute or something, or what it was per hour that they were shooting or something. Like the fighting at Ezra was very horrific. And I mean, Earl Hess has a great book about it. And he actually says anybody that discounts the Union in this battle that opinion is wrong. You have to give Howard the credit because it's his first time leading the army. But the other funny thing that happened too is, Sherman is kind of out watching him. And he's telling Howard, I think you're being, I love this story. I know. Yeah. I think you're being too cautious. And Howard's like, no, because he was protecting his flanks.
Well, he goes, why are you so worried about your flank? And he's like, he's like that meme with the teddy bear. He's like looking sideways, like, he's like, I have some history with this, but that's true.
But that's the thing though, is he looked at Ezra, the ground there, and he recognized that this is like Chancellorsville. I can't have my flank hanging in the air. And that shows how much he learned from that experience. And that's a sign of a great commander. You have and Patrick Cleburne is the same thing, probably on a bigger scale. I mean, in my opinion now, and I didn't have this opinion when I started studying the Civil War, Cleburne was the best the Confederates had by the time he was killed at Franklin. And as you put it really well the other day when we were talking regarding Hood, like if you get hit in a car, you generally don't keep walking into traffic. And that's how you prepared Hood at the Nashville campaign.
It's like that game Frogger. You're trying to go across, you keep get hit by a car. Eventually you have to find a different plan. But I don't dislike Hood. And the problem with Hood is We said this a million times. Wrong guy, wrong time. He just was. And we've debated this many times on and off this thing about Clayburn. Clayburn, he was the best they had, but he had that glass ceiling, and he did for the two reasons we talked about: his emancipation idea, that the guys like Walker and states' rights just went running to the boss. Guess what this guy wants to do? Look at what he wants to do.
Just would not have been a supporter of that.
And then the Irish thing, which was a very, very real thing at the time, the discrimination against the Irish. As a division commander, Hood is as good as you're going to get. He just was. But once he got above that, he had Hood was fantastic at Chickamauga. He was.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. His injury at Gettysburg was huge, considering Evander Law is going to take over. He doesn't even know he's in charge. Yeah. He's on big round top trying to set up his Gibraltar when he finds out he's in charge. That whole thing falls apart. But when he gets higher up, and he really wanted that gig because of his communications with Jeff Davis, he wanted to be the boss. The Army of Tennessee was a monster in the West. For everything the Army of Northern Virginia was in the East, Army of Tennessee was in the West, but it was so sadly mismanaged all the way through.
Yeah.
You can talk about Bragg, everything he did.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted that gig, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Hardee did not. Eventually he said the
hell. No, and who can blame him, right? Like that's and that's the thing. And the thing is Caleb agrees with you about Hood as being a great division commander, and David's a division commander. Absolutely. And then some Inspired said Hood was totally medicated by the end. I mean, we don't like the Laundrum stuff tends to get I don't think he was taking Laundrum at the end, but definitely the side effects of that, and also his injuries, at Ezra Church, he's non-existent. He put Stephen D. Lee in there and doesn't even go out to.
Well, he couldn't even climb a horse, Ezra.
No, he couldn't. And he was physically should not have been commanding that army. But the thing with Hood is he's working behind the scenes, backstabbing Joseph E. Johnston. And, Davis, his pattern is, let's put my friends in command. And that's what he does. And Hood is just not suited as a commander. And when you look at, what happened, he just keeps doubling down. It's day after Franklin, he's like, all right, we're going to go to Nashville now. It's like, dude, you just got your army wrecked. But the other thing too, and I do with Spring Hill, I do put some blame on Cheatham, but at the same time, it also goes back to Hood as well. And he, the one person that doesn't get blamed is S.D. Lee for the artillery.
Well, S.D. Lee, a couple of things about Spring Hill, right? S.D. Lee he's supposed to stay back, and he's supposed to provide artillery to fire upon Schofield, so he doesn't know that the rest of the Army of Tennessee is getting behind him. And he doesn't. He just shows up. Yeah. The thing about too is Brown, right? There's the way that army is supposed to line up. It's supposed to be right, left to right along that road. Brown is drifting off, and he goes back to Hood and says, "Hey, not but if you want me on the road, you have me set up in a way where I'm going the wrong way." So there was really miscommunication all the way. But the thing about it is, you do got to give John Schofield credit, because he did pull that. He did pull that off. It wasn't completely all of them sleeping at the switch. But we talked before about what ramifications it had of Franklin, especially a guy like Clayburn getting blamed for it. Yeah. Right. Nathan Bedford Forrest gets off scot-free from this, for whatever reason. But Forrest wanted to attack them initially. He wanted to be aggressive, right? Yeah. And so it just, that whole thing was a big mess. He goes into Franklin. The problem with Franklin is the time. He fights with about 45 minutes left of daylight left. Yeah. And it's a beautiful day. And then right around dusk, it turns sleet and cold and crappy, and they're fighting in this shit, right? They get destroyed. You have the whole thing with Carter House and the Lots House and the Opdyke's break. That whole story of Franklin. But as Schofield is sneaking across that Harpath River, going back now towards Nashville, which was the goal anyway, once Hood realizes that he's gone, instead of really, the Battle of Nashville takes place on December 15th, right? So he has about 2 weeks now to get ready to go fight George Thomas. But a lot of that delay was because of the snow. but his army was not ready to fight in Nashville yet. They were
No.
broken. He had lost 6 generals at Franklin, and he goes in against a frontal assault with a damaged army against a well-defended, fresh army in Thomas and the rest of Schofield's guys, and gets his ass handed to him.
Yep.
Okay, bad. And then he's going to fall back. And for the most part, that's the end of Hood, Army of Tennessee. But that big monstrous army that was so formidable is dissipated now. And the remains get sent up with Johnston in North Carolina.
Yeah.
But they're destroyed at that point. They're broken at that point.
Yeah, they're broke. They had to put away their regimental flags. There's some good comments here. David mentions the Army of Tennessee book, Conquered by Larry Daniel, which I'm reading right now. I know a couple others have read that too. It's really, really good. Caleb said that Hood knew was aggressive offensive maneuvers. Andrea said by 1864, the wounds they survived were taking a toll on many of them physically and mentally. They were getting worn down. You see that with Rufus Dawes, especially. And David said Hood didn't know how to quit. He's like an enforcer on a hockey team. He needs to be reined in by level heads, not be the dude in charge.
Yeah, we've said that many, many times.
Yeah.
Specifically, if your goal is really to run that clock out in the 64 election, and you know that if you could hold Atlanta, that's going to be a very difficult election for Lincoln if you have this Vicksburg-like quagmire in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
And what does he do? He goes 5 wide, spreads out his receivers.
Yep.
With 2 minutes to go in the game, up by 6.
Yep.
Goes 3 and out, and puts the offensive back on Sherman, and he gets his ass kicked, and then he doubles down. And we've debated this before, and people have gone to me about this on social media. Was his decision, and that's the thing, we don't know if the decision to take Nashville was Hood's or it was Davis's. I think it was probably Davis.
Yeah.
Who said, go get Nashville. Because that's still the supply line hub for the Union. If you take Nashville in your mind, you're bleeding their supplies.
Yeah.
Of course, he doesn't know Sherman is going to live off the land. He doesn't know that.
No.
But what he does do by going to Nashville is he hands over the state of Georgia, who is now defended by old people and kids, in that Augusta armory. He's going to give that up and give Sherman a free pass to the coast. When, in my opinion, of course, 2020 hindsight being my benefactor, that Army of Tennessee would have been better suited to attack Sherman's rear guard and make him stop and fight every inch along the way to prevent him from getting to Savannah. Probably wouldn't have worked because it still would have been a quite outnumbered situation.
Can you imagine there probably would have been a big, not Franklin-like, but a big battle going that way. And yeah, David said Schofield checkmate his own roommate. Like that's Schofield and Hood were roommates, and Howard knew him too from their days at West Point.
That's what's neat about this is you look back at the history, you look at the AP Hill George McClellan college story with this. They both were chasing the same girl,
and then McClellan's future mother-in-law. Which, by the way, it's McClellan's birthday today.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully it's a nice slow day. Take your time. No reason to rush this one.
But yeah, like there's that, like there's all these friendships factoring into it as well. But we were talking a bit about that on our Facebook Live about if Hood had pursued. But then the other thing that, and you and I talked about this too, was like, if someone else had been in command, would they have ended up pursuing Sherman instead? And just nipping him all the way. And if there would have been
the reason why I think this is just my opinion. The reason why I think Davis would have been the guy to point him at Nashville was I think Hood, after losing Atlanta, would have wanted Sherman bad. They wrote those notes back and forth. Those Mean Girls notes. I think if I had my druthers, if he had his druthers, he would have said, "F this, I'm going to get Sherman."
Yeah.
He had Nathan Bedford Forrest, who Sherman was scared shitless of, right? He had a good army. I think if he had his choice, he would have gone at Sherman because he wanted revenge. He wanted to fight. He would have gone up the stupid John Schofield Army of the Ohio. Would have gone to freaking Nashville.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion. So I think it absolves Hood a little bit because people say, "Well, why the hell would he go?" I think he probably was ordered. Mm-hmm. He probably, when he got command from Davis after Atlanta, when Johnson got the old heave ho, he probably said, "Okay, again, this is just speculation. You need to go to Nashville. You need to get there before Schofield, and you need to take out that supplies. We want to get that state capital back." There's a lot of political reasons why. But I think if Hood had his way, he would have gone to him. That's just my opinion. I have no freaking idea, but
Yeah,
I think
no, I
that
think
that
so.
that would make a lot more sense when you study the personalities of the guys in the recent history at that time.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, you know, the other thing that came up too, I think in our roundtable was talking about how did the generals that died, you know, that ended up getting killed, how did they feel about that attack? Like, I know Simmons in his biography about Claiborne, he speculates his opinion, and I agree with it, is that Claiborne did not agree with doing that attack, because we have, I think it's between Govan and Buck Irving. So Daniel Govan and Buck Irving, we have their accounts, and I think it might be Govan's account of what Claiborne was doing in the minutes leading up to before he went into battle, is he's looking through his like telescope or whatever, the field glass, and Claiborne's talking to himself, but Govan could hear him, and he was saying, "Oh, they're entrenched. Oh, they're really, really entrenched." Like, and realizing that what a disaster it was going to be. And I do want to find some more of Govan. I want to know more of Govan's thoughts on the Battle of Franklin, because he survived. He lives quite a while after the Civil War too, but he's also the last person to speak to Claiborne a lot. Like, you know, Claiborne says his last words to him, says, "Well, Govan, if we're to die, let us die like men." And he gets on his horse. And Govan never sees him alive again. I don't know how the hell Govan managed to survive.
No, it's a miracle. A lot of these guys did, but you've almost got, I don't want to say like a World War I type trench situation, but between Nashville and Franklin, you had an incredible defense. They inherited a ready-made defense system in Franklin that was already there, and then Nashville, they had all that time to defend it and build on it. Throw in the fact that by the way, it's snowy out, it's crappy out. Some of these battles weren't fought in the heat like you see nowadays on the movies and Gettysburg and these type of things. You know, Franklin and Nashville fought in sleet and snow, and it's a tough, especially with guys with no shoes on and things like that.
That's I have to think that Claiborne didn't agree with it, but you know, just like he said at Ringgold Gap, "Well, I'm a soldier and I follow orders, so I have to do it." But the thing is, you know, more than ever, he had to be the one leading his men, physically leading that charge, right? Otherwise, how are you going to get those men to do it?
Well, we talked. I think he felt slighted.
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
it's like the Michael Jordan meme. You know, so I took it personally.
Yeah,
I think he was pointed out from Hood for Spring Hill. This is an Irish guy who's had to prove himself every step along the way because he was hated. He couldn't get into pharmacy school in Ohio. Had to go down, down to Helena, Arkansas, build his life there. He was always had one strike on him for the Irish thing. And so now he does a really good job almost all the way through. Shiloh, he kind of screws up, but for the most part, he has a good history, and now he's being blamed. Of course, he's going to redeem himself. It's a lot like Beauregard is Shiloh. Speaking of Shiloh, when he sends
Garnett at Pickett's charge.
When he sends that victory cigar message back, we won, and then here comes Don Carlos Buell. I'm kind of screwed now, so I have to win or die trying.
Yeah,
and so there's that personal courage that has to come out, and I think for Claiborne, I think that's probably what happened with him. Is he knew he had to. This was his moment to redeem it and what he wanted to do, and it's really too bad, and it's really a bummer because of what was potentially robbed from reconciliation after the war from a guy like Patrick Claiborne, who probably would have been part of that Mosby Longstreet.
I think so.
There would have helped reconciliate the countries versus the Jubal Earlys of the world who wanted nothing to do with it. So that's all. Again, this is all speculation, which is kind of fun about history. Is you can kind of imagine things how they could have gone, and if it's right, it's wrong, it's great, but that's kind of the way it is,
Oh yeah, it's very fluid. It's great to sit here and discuss it. Caleb mentioned Stones River was rough on the weather too. Have a good weekend, Andrea.
We'll see you.
But and like weather does obviously factor into these battles as well. Like we saw at Shiloh how the rain delayed Albert Sidney Johnston. He's another one who, in my opinion, has recently changed a little bit after reading the Daniel book. I just think Albert Sidney Johnston, had he lived, would have made things really, really tough for Grant. But now I'm not so sure, just because he's not that as good as what I once thought him to be.
No, but he would have been better than Bragg, though. He would have been. I mean, he had a lot of territory to cover. He was kind of put in a tough situation. Obviously, him getting shot in the way he did at Shiloh and dying.
Yeah.
It did create a good what if in that Confederate army because you went through that who's who of shit about of people commanding, and would Albert Sidney Johnston provide a little more stability?
Mhm.
I mean, I just can't think he'd have been worse. I guess that's probably what it was.
Yeah, it was just his argument. And Caleb said he doesn't agree with Daniels about Johnson. Daniels' argument was really interesting in that he was like, okay, well, let's look at Johnson's track record. But then again, the other side to that is the fact that Johnson is having to deal with a 700-mile front. That is gigantic. I can't imagine being the manager of that.
I've said this to you. I've said this to you 1,000 times. And I'll say it again. I think Johnston would have provided a better formidable foe for Grant and Sherman.
Yeah,
I think it would.
Oh, he would.
I don't think it would have been Brady Manning. I don't think it would have been like that.
Mhm.
But I think what it would have been is I think it would have been, Grant wins 2, Johnston wins a 3rd, and they kind of stalemate and slow things down.
Yeah.
I would have loved to seen how Albert Sidney Johnston would have defended.
With Vicksburg,
like Vicksburg.
That would have been, yeah. Because do you have Pemberton in that case? And the other thing too is if Albert Sidney Johnston lives, do we see Patrick Cleburne rise to commanding a corps? Maybe Johnston had a differing opinion of him. Do we because Albert Sidney Johnston obviously is better than Bragg. Anything's better than Hood, in my opinion, when it comes to Army of Tennessee. But do we have a different command structure? I think too, another positive about Albert Sidney Johnston is he had better control over, now minus what happened with Henry and Donaldson. I think he's got a little bit more control over subordinates like Bragg, like Polk,
Well, Henry, anybody could have won it. Fort Henry was an easy one. I mean, you had the boats took care. Yeah. Donaldson is the interesting one because of some of the people like Breckinridge and some of the mistakes and they all took turns of who can get the hell out of Dodge. GTFO was
that was hilarious when Breckinridge was like, "I'm a wanted man, I have to go."
Well, they have to stand around and say, "Okay, who's going to stay behind and get caught?" And they go, "I can't. They're going to kick my ass."
Breckinridge is like, "My people need me."
I sold you weapons to the Confederacy when I was in the North. They want me bad. I know. All right, you can go. And they all just kind of it ends up being a disaster. But Donaldson was a huge thing because it set up those Trans-Mississippi battles, it set up those Western battles. But when Pemberton is commanding Vicksburg, I mean, it's really tough to say because you had a lot of people in and out of Vicksburg really defending that going forward.
Yeah.
There was martial law in the town. There was a lot of stuff that was going on with that, and Pemberton, he didn't do a bad job with that.
No.
It was really that Grant.
Joseph E. Johnson kind of screws him over in the end.
Well, I mean, right, but the landing at Bruinsburg in Grierson's raid and able to go over to Jackson, Mississippi, and keep Johnson there, like he's going to take Jackson, pin them, and then kind of turn back towards Vicksburg. I mean, you can say what you want about Grant, but his Vicksburg campaign is going to be up there with some of the greatest in American military history. His landing at Bruinsburg was the biggest amphibious landing in American history until D-Day. If you think about it, it took all those months to come down the Mississippi River because of those gun batteries. And you have they're going to dig that trench that doesn't work, and there's Duck River. There's all those different ways they tried to get in. Finally, they run the gauntlet, and they get there, and they're able to. The great Nathan Banks, he's south defending that whole area too. Yep. But really, it's Grant. I mean, Vicksburg is really him. That Overland campaign really in Petersburg is his feathers in his hat. But Vicksburg is a brilliant campaign. When you look
it is. Yeah, it is. It takes a while, but he finally gets it. David mentions, let's not forget the idiots that Davis put in charge at Henry Donaldson and Island 10. Yeah, I called them the brain trust trifecta.
Well, that's what we're just talking about, is the people, especially Ford. I mean, Henry had no chance. The Navy took care. But Donaldson was a who's who of disasters. It was really stripped. And if you study that battle really in depth, I mean, they even screwed the retreat up.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, the whole thing was a big mess. They got the whole army basically
a mess.
They pretty much got that entire army caught and the fort caught. And by opening up those two rivers it opens the door to Vicksburg, and at the end of the day, which splits the Confederacy in half. And every one of these builds up to the next big thing.
Yeah, once you get Vicksburg, you need Chattanooga. That was, and I mean, Lincoln said of Vicksburg that it was the key. But then the other one, the other city that he felt was just as equally important, he felt Chattanooga was more important to have than Richmond because of the rail hub, because of the rivers, and because it's like the gateway to Atlanta, which you get into Atlanta, you're getting into that heartland.
No, but before we wax poetic completely on Grant, he did fuck up Holly Springs. And Sherman did screw up Chickasaw. So those two parts of the Vicksburg campaign, the Vicksburg 1 versus Vicksburg 2 campaign. When you get beat by Earl Van Dorn, Mary, that's a tough one.
EVD.
You're down with EVD,
You know who was supposedly, and this is, I don't know if it's true or not, but the chick that EVD was banging and is, what's her face? The doctor's wife?
Yeah.
Anyway, she apparently, who she was apparently with the night of Spring Hill?
Oh.
Cheatham.
Really? Makes sense.
There's a story that he was like the bang barn with her or something like that. And that's why he wasn't around.
Yeah, she clearly got around.
There was some book I was reading about it, and
these doctors' wives, man, I'm telling you,
she had quite the reputation with the generals, I guess. But yeah, that's like, I mean, the whole Earl Van Dorn thing is like, guy comes in to get a pass from him and then shoots him because he's been.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. No, but you can look at these, and it goes back to what we said a little while ago. Every one of these guys has their good and their bad. Earl Van Dorn, I mean, P. Ridge, you want to talk P. Ridge real quick? I mean, he had a good plan and it just didn't work out for him that way. And so Franz Siegel ruins your day of all things. It's kind of funny how these guys have great days and these guys end up being kind of disastrous.
Siegel clearly loved the big weapons, the artillery, and he liked firing cannons, and he should have stayed there. He was a great artillery guy. The funny thing about Franz Siegel is, the German revolutions happened, I think it's like 1940 or 1848, right? And that's where you have a lot of like, was Kriz involved? Kriz was involved in those.
Shizanovsky, obviously,
yeah.
Schurz. There's a whole bunch of.
Schurz was the one that broke that guy out of prison.
Schurz had quite a colorful history in Germany. But a lot of these guys, both the Germans and the Irish, we don't forget, one of every 4 Union soldiers was from overseas in the Union Army. They all came here basically to learn how to fight. We were talking before about Mosby. There was when he caught all those Irish soldiers on that train that time. He's the Irish guys he meets him and says, "What are you guys doing here?" He goes, "Well, we came to learn how to fight, for whatever." He's like, "All right." And the guy complains and says, he runs up to Mosby and says, "Hey, your army guys stole my boots and my pants." And he goes, "Well, you came to learn how to fight in a war, right?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, there's your first lesson." And so that's what happens to a lot of these guys. But every one of them, they kind of all intertwine.
The whole Siegel thing is like, and it's Pulla's book about the 11th Corps, which is excellent. I love that book. And I'm going to get back to reading it when I'm on break from school here in a few weeks. He talks about how Siegel is kind of this anomaly, and among these revolutionaries that come over to America, it's kind of like he didn't really do anything of note. He's not like Carl Schurz, where he like breaking his like old commander out of a prison.
Schurz looked like the type of guy that kind of was just a creepy for him. I mean, he just did.
He honestly, he looks like this kind of quiet. He's drinking an IPA at the bar kind of guy.
He looks like the type of guy who has bodies in his basement. That's what he looks like.
He also looks like he's very quiet. I wouldn't want to cross his path. He's actually my second favorite person in the 11th Corps. I really love Carl Schurz. He's such an interesting guy. Him and who's it? Schimmelpenning are interesting too. Pigman? Wasn't he the one that Charleston?
He captured Charleston.
Yeah.
I mean, admittedly, there was no fight put up. As soon as they heard, if you read Mary Chesnutt's diary, they were scared shitless of Sherman. So as soon as they found that he was in the neighborhood, they just said, roll him up, And so Schimmelpenning was able to catch that. Was able to be the guy who took the surrender of Charleston, which is pretty cool. But nothing happened in Charleston. Allegedly Sherman demanded Charleston not be burned because he had a girlfriend.
He had girlfriends.
I was sitting at the West End bar in Charleston one time, and talk about Sherman because that's what jackasses do, talk about Sherman in the
I do
South.
that when I go south.
And so we were talking to some guy at the bar, and he goes, "There's some old guy." He goes, you know why?" And that's the common knowledge that
Yeah.
that was the case.
I would believe that completely. And that's why I find the friendship between Howard and Sherman so interesting, because Sherman is this like, it's just like the friendship between Hardy and Claiborne. Hardy
Yeah.
was a ladies' man, and that book I'm reading about Army of Tennessee, he does a good job about detailing the commanders and their reputations, and he's kind of funny about it. But he said that the one thing that Claiborne said about Hardy was he was really into the women. And that kind of worried Claiborne at times. That
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
like,
sure what kind of chicks he's getting. He looks like the last guy at the bar at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know,
yeah, Hardy does. But the thing with Sherman is he had girlfriends everywhere, I think. I mean, Howard had the run-in with one of them, right?
Well, we talked about the fact that he had the girlfriend in Colombia, remember?
Yeah, well, that's the one Howard ran into, right? When
Yeah,
she was like coming
yeah.
up to him, like, you need to save my house. And Howard basically is like, not now.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's what that was. But no, but a lot of these guys have his colorful histories, no question. But but that's the story with Charleston. It's amazing that of all the towns, that's the one that has the no damage. You go to Columbia, you can go to City Hall still, and you can see you can see some of the damage. We were in Chambersburg. You can see the damage in Chambersburg.
Yep. Yeah, that was interesting seeing that. Miranda said Sigel was the best general the Rebs had at Newmarket. That whole thing, like Siegel's just such a like. And the thing with Sigel is like, he has this temper tantrum and he's like, I want more men. And then they're like, you're gone from the 11th Corps. And he kind of, I don't know what he does. Probably plays with cannons in his backyard for the entire time he's not in the army. But then Lincoln calls him up again because it's election time and he needs the German vote. Right. So he's like, hey, would you like to command again? And Siegel's like, whatever, sure. And we all saw how that went.
It didn't work out too well. Bad day for Mother.
Yeah. But he said Hardy would fit in quite well at the mine. Could you
imagine me, you, Ski, and Fresnito sitting there with him? Imagine that.
Could you imagine Hardy at the mine? He probably would be doing I wonder if he would be singing Kelly Clarkson, like, what's his face was that night?
Oh, that was so weird.
I never thought I would be sitting in the mine singing Since You've Been Gone by Kelly Clarkson with Bill Frazanito.
Well, what was so funny was we mentioned this before on some other things, but we're sitting there. It was late one night, and everybody knows Bill Frazanito. He does all those fantastic, basically those thin and out Gettysburg books.
Yeah,
and he's really the I don't want to say the father of Gettysburg photography, but he's really helped really make that come to life again. Guys like Gary Edelman kind of have taken it over too. But we're sitting there one day and we were talking to the bartender, and they were using Fraz's iPhone to play the music.
Yeah.
And it was all like 90s, like Taylor Swift, that stuff, right? And then that song comes on by Kelly Clarkson. He starts singing. And of course, we've maybe had a couple too many that day ourselves. Yeah. I mean, 11 o'clock on a Friday in Gettysburg, I was going to do all night. And now we're all singing the song with Fraz.
That was like, wow.
That was a lot of fun. And just picture Fraz. Since you've been gone.
Yeah, he's sitting there and he's like
rocking
along,
out.
And we're like, all right. The chorus, we were just all of us like singing it.
Yeah, none of us be running for Senate at that video came out. But that was a lot of fun though. He's a good dude. He likes
he's fun to hang out with, but yeah, Hardy, definitely mine. Yeah. You could see Hardy sitting at the Reliance mine with Pat Claiborne next to him. Pat Claiborne would be having a seltzer water because Claiborne didn't drink because it made him so angry.
Of course, be leaking out the side of his mouth too. He had to drink it this way. Him and old Gordon sitting together.
Oh God, could you imagine if you could have bar conversations with these guys?
I bet you would have been a lot of fun. I mean, there was who the hell was I talking to? I was talking to a friend of mine, and that's what it was. I was talking to a friend of mine who's currently a ranger at Gettysburg. We were sitting at a place called Sharpshooters one day, which is not a livery over there by Harris Ridge, talking about who we drink with. Just sitting around, and I'm not sure who it would be because Robert E. Lee certainly he just would be fun. And I think we all agreed that Sickles or Butterfield would be the guy. Yeah. Because I think that or Hooker, I think that'd be fun. But I think we'll focus just on Gettysburg. So I think we would talk to. I think we all kind of agree that Sickles would probably be the best guy.
Yeah.
But that's.
David said not drunk Gordon. Could you imagine John Brown Gordon drunk?
Oh, it's not. It's so funny.
I have to say, I think for me, like if I'm gonna go Eastern Theater, honestly, AP Hill.
I don't know.
I
Well,
want to ask him about that whole. So was that thing to Antietam? Was that a spite march?
oh, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think I think that's probably realistically what he probably what, I mean that whole stupid thing. But that's what's great about this is when you study these battles and everyone shut your eyes, you see those battle maps, the blue and the red, the arrows.
Yep.
But when you look at the individual motivations besides all these people, sometimes it's just amazing.
Well, yeah,
Um,
AP Hill is like,
oh
so
yeah.
we
Oh,
did his Spite March tour last November. And basically what it is he's pissed off at Jackson. He's pissed off at McClellan, and Burnside owes him how much money?
it's like $3,000.
So he is like, fuck it, I'm going to go to Antietam. And he
Yeah.
saves the army because he does that.
Speaking of Burns, the anniversary of Fredericksburg's coming up.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Fredericksburg, Nashville.
So our friend Ski is going to be down there in Caroline Street. Speaking of singing at the top of his lungs, since hopefully the next couple of days. But yeah, next week is the anniversary. So that's going to be 160th anniversary Battle of Fredericksburg. Hopefully the town does a big deal for that. That's a good one.
Yeah. So people are saying Tony said Claiborne would be the designated driver. Caleb said he'd drink with Sickles. So did David. Ski said that. Caleb mentions Jubal early. David said,
I bet you.
AP Hill.
He's probably a mean drunk Jubal early. That'd be a fun.
Maybe that's what makes him nice, though.
No, I don't know. Maybe
Lee's battles, man.
You know what? I like AP Hill. I'm not gonna lie. I like AP Hill. I think AP Hill's a guy who I don't want to say understudied or underappreciated, but he had a really good core at Gettysburg, and they were the first men in, and he was someone who had some good guys under him with Anderson, Pender, and Heath, and he had some good division guys, and they fought well.
Oh, they did.
They did.
Yeah, and he's the one that takes over Jackson's. Is that?
Well, it gets split up. You end up going from 2 to 3, so you have Ewell, and so Ewell was brand new, but he kind of grew. He kind of was under that Jackson's shadow, so he kind of did what Jackson did a little bit. So it's kind of a protege. So that they kind of all got mixed up a little bit. But Ewell had a success, obviously, at second Winchester right off the bat against Milroy.
Oh yeah, that's the thing that nobody talks about. Yeah, and Caleb agreed. Like AP Hill was a good general. His men were hell of fighters. Tony asked, where was AP Hill at Gettysburg?
Well, that's the great mystery. Is no one knows where the hell AP Hill physically was, because he just wasn't.
Was he not feeling that well or something?
He was down. He wasn't feeling well. But that's a question you get a lot, is where he was personally. He was in and out. A better question was where was Richard Anderson on the second day of Gettysburg? That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, Lang and Posey and Mahone, they were all going in.
Yeah.
Ambrose right. Anderson's nowhere to be found. And some people think he was way in the back getting banged up there.
Yeah. Ski says Fredericksburg has a lot of stuff planned, but surprisingly not a lot. David said AP Hill at Antietam was the MVP. Everyone does the what if Jackson was at Gettysburg. I go with what if AP Hill wasn't constantly ill and unable to be in command.
Oh, he was definitely MVP at Antietam. I mean, he was like the closer who comes in, late in the game. You bring him in.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, Burnside's going right across. The Union Army is going to pinch them right up against. They're going to force them back to Shepherdstown, and they're going to bag the whole army right there at the back against the river. So AP Hill coming in absolutely saved the day.
Oh yeah.
It was still a Union win, but it was a 51 to 49% victory, and so it allowed Lincoln to get the Emancipation Proclamation and all the black soldiers, all that stuff that came out of it. But a Hill doesn't come because his ass is tied to a desk at Harper's Ferry. Yeah. And he comes for those 3 reasons you mentioned.
Yeah.
If he kept his orders, if he maintained orders, he's staying at Harper's Ferry. Lee is probably going to get bagged. That could be the end right there in the East.
Yeah, and that's why it's so funny that the reasons that he probably did that were nothing to do with, well, I don't want to see the army get destroyed. It's, well, I'm pissed off at Jackson, I'm pissed off at McClellan, and I'm owed some money. And Burnside ended up paying that money to somebody else, right?
That's the thing no one really knows, is he had $3,000 in his pocket apparently that Hill wanted, and that's ironically the same amount of money that Burnside paid to a spy to find out the position at Fredericksburg. So was it the same money? I don't know. They had too many ATMs back in 1862, so it probably was. So it didn't work out too well for old Burnside of Fredericksburg. But I mean, but again, yeah, these things all play into each other, all these stories. And there's so many Empire Strikes Back moments, right? When you think this is going to end,
Yeah.
they get bailed out.
Yeah. Whether
it's
it's
just
by it's and the AP Hill story is what fascinates me quite a bit. Roger said, "You're not picking Chamberlain." No, I don't think I'd want to drink with Joshua. Like
he'd be one of those dudes who'd sit there and try to explain to you why his beer was better, why your beer sucked. He would sit there and say, "Well, I probably invented beer back in Brunswick, Maine, actually." You have Ellis Spears behind him going like this the whole time.
I would love for you to Photoshop that scene in Gettysburg. Weren't you going to try and do something?
Do you know who Joshua Chamberlain was for talking beers? He was Cliff Clavin at Cheers. That's who Chamberlain would have been.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what I did is I ordered that bayonet charge. I did.
And Ellis Spears in the back, like
William C. Oates was at his very strength, and the company B they should have attacked earlier, but they were, but that's what you could have done. And I like Chamberlain.
I do too.
But I think he I think for the most part you could certainly make a case that he loved himself some Chamberlain, and anybody who's been to his museum up at Bowdoin College, we were a few months or so ago, and look, his little round top is a must win for the Union Army. But I'll tell you, the ghost of Chamberlain must be getting big time royalties from the ghost of Shara, right? Because I remember, and everyone's been at Gettysburg, and you're standing in a little round top. I'm smoking my cigar, right? Mm-hmm. And how many people say, "Who's that statue of the Rock?" That's Joshua Chamberlain. Yeah. And you roll your eyes, but that's because that's how you're taught. But he did his 20th did a lot of great things. But I think because of that movie makes it seem like that's the only thing. But he lived on that. I mean, he ran completely. He ran and won governor by the greatest differentials in the election because his sentence structure was a noun, a verb, in Gettysburg. Is kind of what it was. And hey, good for him. And by no means, like I said, I'm ripping on Chamberlain. He's one of the all-time best. Yeah. But Colville, David Ireland.
Yeah,
there's a lot of guys, especially Ireland. I love me some Ireland, even though he's a freaking New Yorker, right? I mean, as far as where the 137th was, he basically saved the Union's bacon, Dave Ireland. He gets no credit for it.
Yeah, I agree. David said Governor K. Warren has entered the chat, and he said Chamberlain will get angry and say, "Call me governor. F that Ireland dude, bayonets." Well, he didn't like Ellis Spear. Did not like Chamberlain, and I love the fact that Ellis Spear's cane is on display there. And I don't think that was out of respect. I think that was a fuck you.
Well, I think the Spears family wants that in there because it's like, hey, well, not for nothing, but we would have the story of Little Round Top is fascinating because if you read Passing of the Armies by Joshua Chamberlain, which is a great read, he's a very good writer. He talks about how with no ammunition left, which is first false because they did have ammunition, by the way, they weren't empty, they still had them. He goes, we ordered a wheel route down the hill, or just like the movie. Just like the movie. I don't know if they was playing the music and it was going. I don't think they were doing that. But he says they ordered an orderly charge, where Spears, who was the one who took off, he says they went down the hill because they saw the colors going down the hill. They chased after the colors. So I think the reality was it kind of all happened kind of organically to the Union's benefit. And they did chase down William C. Oates. But Oates had a feud with Chamberlain right to their death, but over his brother. How far they wanted the 15th Alabama Monument, where that big rock is, if you know the area, right behind Little Round Top, where his brother allegedly his body had been taken. Chamberlain says they never got there. He says that you never got there, so I'm not going to agree to you that you're going to put a monument there. So there's no monument there. But I think a lot of these guys embellish. I mean, it's like here's the deal. Okay, I played high school football and I sucked. Okay, I caught one pass in my entire life. Okay, but you know what though? Years later, not only did I catch a pass, it was a touchdown. It was. But then years after that, it was a game-winning touchdown.
Yeah.
And then now I'm telling people I was the all-time receiving leader. That's kind of what happens. It gets embellished in time.
Yeah.
And I think for Chamberlain, unfortunately, I think that's what happened with him.
I think so too. I mean, and the other thing, Chamberlain too, he was a great writer. And like, just, I don't know, I like him. I have a great deal of respect for him. His museum's amazing. He's a fascinating individual, but there are others out there like David Ireland, like Charles Tilden, whose names don't get mentioned. And yes, it goes back to the Shara thing. It goes back to the movie. Some people are in here talking about still AP Hill. Where is it here? Hill's men deserve much more credit for what they did in Pickett's charge. David said AP Rivera, the closer, or for Darren, should I say Papelbon?
No, Rivera's the king of closers. I'll admit that. He was Mariano's the best of all time. He is. Papelbon was good though. I'm not going to lie to you. He was good in 07 when they won the World Series, by the way. World Series, by the way, marries with the baseball teams if they make the finals. And I know you're an Indians fan, so you might not know what that phrase is, but that's what it's called.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think I wouldn't want to have a beer with Chamberlain. Honestly, he would not be my first choice. On the Union side in the Eastern Theater, I mean, obviously not Howard because he can't drink. He doesn't. Probably Schimmelfennig or Schurz.
what?
Yeah. I don't know. Talk to like
From the 11th Corps?
Yeah.
You're not gonna. I got to go with either Barlow or Delbart Ames. I got to go with one of those guys. Delbart Ames, because Delbart Ames, he was related to guess who? Old Spoons Mary.
Yeah.
Old Benjamin Butler. You could do a little mass hole connection, the three of us, me and him, me, Ames and Butler. That's what I would probably do.
Like, and so Western Theater, who would I have a beer with? On the Confederate side, obviously not Claiborne because he doesn't drink. I think Daniel Govan, because I would want to talk to him about Franklin because he survived. He was very close with Claiborne, or Irving Buck, Claiborne's adjutant. I would want to like talk to them. And then the Union side, Western Theater, Black Jack Logan.
See, I have to think of like a Lou Wallace. I could say, Lou, what the hell were you thinking screwing my Mary Surratt that way? Why would you do that to her? What was in your mind? Although props are chasing down that Billy the Kid, though. Screw him.
That whole thing.
Oh, God. It's amazing what you wake up to in the chat. You see 8,000 messages.
But I mean, you know what? It's great to hear the different perspectives as to why somebody not only likes somebody, but why they might not like them as well.
Of course.
That's the cool thing about it. And I mean, it's like, yeah, it was really great hearing that side of it. Gentili and I want to do shots with Buster.
I don't think you want to go shot with an Irishman. You know, it'll be a killer shot.
But that's how Claiborne was. What was it? The story Simmons tells it in his book. Claiborne got really drunk one night, passed out, and his friend went to check on him.
He almost killed him.
Yeah, he almost killed him.
Can you imagine going to the bar with him and Claiborne, old Thomas Hinman? So these are guys who used to duel each other.
Yeah.
Imagine how angry they must have been. And Claiborne, he didn't drink because it made him angry.
Yeah.
Which is why he also didn't want to drink, by the way.
He also didn't. I think one of the reasons he's like, I got to not play into the Irish stereotype here.
Oh, I know, but I think that there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of people like that with these individual personalities, and they'll come from different backgrounds. But AP Hill would be another dark horse one. I think he'd be fun because
that would AP Hill probably.
Can you imagine how much you got to piss off a former mother-in-law who starts spreading stories that you got gonorrhea?
Even visiting the Bang Barn in New York City.
Can you imagine that? I mean, that's. I'm sorry.
Well, she obviously liked Little Mac over AP Hill. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, don't go out with that guy with the red shirt because he's got gonorrhea, and I'm going to tell everybody. Talk about fucking body shaming.
Jesus. So bad.
It's stupid. It's bad though. It's true though.
MJ, my goal would be to get Howard to drink whiskey, and Caleb said Howard would be the guy who couldn't get drunk no matter what he drank.
See, I think Howard's the guy. He has a couple of shots. He's jumping on the bar singing "It's Raining Men." That's who I think he is.
Now
I
I'm
think he-
picturing that.
I
Is he
think
like a
he's that-
microwave drunk like Grant was? Oh my
I think
God.
that's with his arm and pinched. I think that's probably what it.
Could you
I
imagine
think,
Howard? He'd be like Coyote Ugly or something.
oh God, if you turn into a Tom Cruise movie was a cocktail, that's what it'd probably
Oh.
be. But no, but who the hell knows? But I think suffice it to say, I think Chamberlain, going back to this whole thing, I think he I don't want to say he's overrated, but he definitely is an A-lister because of his personal promotion.
Yeah.
He had a great PR team, which is basically himself. Anybody who makes his wife call him governor
Don't
and
get
she
any ideas.
and she does it, I'm sorry, that's baller status. Good morning,
Well,
governor. That's your wife.
not
What
doing
the
it.
hell?
Not doing it.
I gotta run for governor. I want to run governor. We were at the Mass State House last week, Mary.
We were. That was really cool.
We were stumbling in unsupervised in the Massachusetts State House. We
Yeah.
found our way in the governor's office. Just
That was
walked in.
cool seeing that. And the
Lady's
view, the view.
And the secretary's like, "Hi, can I help you?" No. Come on, Elsa. Want to look around?
You
Sure.
want to go to the balcony? Sure.
So we ended up hanging out in old Charlie Baker's office and walking. That was a good day.
That was really fun. And yeah, from the office, the view is you can look down and see the 54th.
Yeah.
Patrick said Lou Walsh should have used the Ben Hur chariots at Shiloh. And let Grant try to badmouth him. I do feel so bad for Lou Walsh with Shiloh though, because it's one of those things that's kind of become, I don't want to say a myth in the Civil War, but it's almost like a scapegoat type thing that Grant was like, oh, I need to blame somebody. Maybe I'll blame Wallace.
Yeah.
He doesn't blame Sherman. And Sherman was 100% caught off guard that day. No,
I mean, Sherman, look, you want to talk about a one-way reputation, Sherman killed, we all know he killed everybody in Georgia. He burnt the whole state down.
Yeah.
Everyone died. But he had his moments on the negative side too. I mean,
yeah.
And it wasn't his fault. I mean, Meridian, he did what he needed to do, but David Suey Smith fell on his dick and that whole thing against Forrest. Obviously, we mentioned Chickasaw, which is a horrible. You got beat by SD Lee. It was that was a bad day for him for that one, and it delayed, and it really delayed that. And he did do well going through North Carolina, South Carolina, but that point it was that cult of personality. But the second he popped his head out in Savannah, he was a rock star for Lincoln, Stanton, and Halleck, and that was And at that moment on, he didn't question anything Grant or Sherman did again the rest of the war. I mean, admittedly, it was almost the end anyway. But that's the truth, though.
Yeah, he didn't question it, and I mean, like the thing with Sherman is he is a little overrated. I still have a lot of respect for him. And what he's
we can say it. He's overrated.
He's overrated. He's the only guy though that could have done the March to the Sea. Grant could have done that.
That is true. That is true.
He
was great in spots. Now, if Grant, he could not have done what Grant did.
No,
but you're right. Sherman was the only guy who probably could have pulled a March to the Sea. I would have loved it though. I would have loved it if Hood challenged him. Just to see how those battles would have played itself out. But in hindsight, if it brought the war to a quicker end, so everything justifies the means. No matter what side you're on, the war was over with. It was less lives lost, but it would have been a lot more difficult for Sherman if he had someone besides old guys and kids fighting. Right, Griswoldville notwithstanding, Augusta, nothing happened. He got a free pass. He did, because they were chasing Schofield and going to Nashville, which was absolutely worthless. It was a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
But they didn't know that
anything after Atlanta is you have to question any battles after Atlanta, and that's why Franklin is so. It's like, oh my God, like what the hell kind of thing.
Yeah, no,
but I think Sherman. Probably one of the better assessments I've seen of him was what Howard wrote in his memoirs. That just the whole, like basically saying Sherman could come up with a great battle, but when it came time to initiate, he didn't have it. He didn't have what Grant had.
Well,
and that's why Sherman is questioned by Thomas at Kennesaw. It's like, you want to do what? Like,
the only person, in my opinion, in this entire war who could do what Grant did was probably Stonewall Jackson. The only guy who probably could, who could formulate a plan, execute it ruthlessly, and take the losses and continue to go. Now, Lee had more dead in his army than Grant had. So the Grant the Butcher thing is kind of overshadowed. If you read Bone Temper's book, The Lost Cause book, it explains that pretty well. But Grant, Sherman was great, but he was a bob and weave guy. He was a guy
Yeah.
who would hit the flank and fall back. He was not a full frontal guy. Probably thank God for everybody, right?
God.
But except for Kennesaw Mountain, but that was his
Yeah.
only thing when they attacked Cheatham over there.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, anybody attacking that. David said Sherman is good at tactics, not so great running battles. Hood's aggressiveness coupled with that would have been interesting if he chased him.
Well, I mean that's because that was my whole point with that is Hood would have forced Sherman to fight and stop and fight. Now Sherman's going to win because he has more men, and the thing about Sherman too is he definitely knew the ground way better than Hood would have, because Sherman, what he was great at was engineering. He knew the mountains, he knew the passes, he could
visit a place once and he could basically, and again, something Howard talks about is basically he doesn't call it this, but this is what it is. It's photographic memory.
Right.
You can go somewhere and you can map out places and you never forget how they look. You can always know. And I think like it would have been interesting to see Sherman. The other thing too is who has the better subordinates? Is it Hood or is it Sherman? I personally think Sherman has the better subordinate generals overall. Now Hood's got Pat Claiborne though. But Cheatham's
so you're saying, okay, so
I'm looking at this like if they did have the battle, who's got the better subordinate?
So you're saying Slocum, Howard, Sherman, versus Hood. No, the Confederates had better.
No, you think the better?
Oh, they
I guess
did.
they did. Yeah, Cheatham's. Who is?
Well, no, it's not.
That's
just
true. Actually, you're right.
I mean, all right then. I'm right. It's 11:35 on a Saturday. Everybody write that date down. Darren was right today. Woohoo! I'm going to take the W on that one. Okay. No, the Confederates would have had better subordinates, but the Union had more men, and they would have been fighting on a defensive ground of their choosing, so they probably would have won. But no, the Union Army at that point. I mean, you're going to take Claiborne or you're going to take Jefferson C. Davis.
Claiborne.
You're going to take Blackjack Logan, or you're going to take States Right Gist. I mean that's what I mean. That's who you're comparing. Though the difference is you're taking an army fighting. Ironically, you're fighting a Southern army fighting against a Union who has better idea of the ground in a Southern state. So it's all friggin' bizarro world shit with this. But you got to take the Confederates and you do.
Yeah, you do. And I think, the thing with that is it would have freaked the shit out of Sherman because, I mean, I know Forrest is one of his rivals, but the guy that was in his head just as much as Forrest was Pat Claiborne.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing too, is you're going to have Forrest, right? You're also going to have Joseph Wheeler, because Wheeler did go after them. You would have had them.
Wheeler was the one that nipped at Howard.
Okay. Sherman didn't really have much cavalry, didn't have much artillery at all.
Kilpatrick. And
right. But I mean, so it was mostly infantry. They're also living. I think Sherman is going to win that, but I also think it's going to be several battles all the way to the coast.
It's going to be like the Atlanta campaign drawn further.
It would have been Overland campaign in Georgia is what it would have been. Exactly. It's exactly what it would have been. Except you would have had Sherman going east and the Union Hood. Whether Hood tries to flank them and who the hell knows, maybe he would have based on Spring Hill, but it would have been an interesting set of battles. But he went that way and he went that way, and they never happened.
So David's got an interesting what if Hardee had stayed with the Army of Tennessee?
Well, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
See, William Hardee was somebody who had the brains, he had the support, but he just wasn't having
like
this.
I'm not getting caught up in this mess kind of thing. And he goes to Savannah with Beauregard.
See, we say Beauregard because of, the beer. But if PGT Beauregard is in charge of that, how does that change? Because he was substantially better than anything they were going to have either.
Oh my God, yeah.
After Shiloh, after Corinth, he's going to get his ass chained to a desk pretty much for the rest of the war, for the most part.
Yeah.
But this is what happens when you look at for the Confederates to win this war. They needed the right guys through the right things at the right times, and every chance
in
Davis
the right
had,
position,
except for Robert E. Lee on June 1st, 1862, taking over for Joseph Johnston in the East. Almost every decision he made was the wrong one.
Yeah.
Now, look, he made some right ones too, but I'm saying for the grand stuff he did, it just seemed like he stepped in every chance he could. And he also meddled because Davis himself wanted to be a general.
He was a micromanager, and that's why, that's the one thing that goes, going back to Franklin and Hood. This is one reason I don't like Hood, is how he got the command was not based on, anything that, like, I mean, Hardee would have been great. Beauregard. Hell, just keep Joseph E. Johnston.
I mean, I'm not sure. Great might be an overreach, but I think he would have been more competent. And look, Bragg had his moments. He had his moments in, Richmond and Kentucky. He did have his moments. He did. But he was just hated by his men so much. I don't care how good of a manager you are. If your employees hate you, your shelf life is short term.
Oh, well, I mean, you drop
unless of course you're the manager of the New York Yankees, and they keep you forever no matter how much everybody hates you, which is great. So keep that command structure in the Yankees. Keep it up. Love that.
Yeah. David said Davis was all about sycophants and nepotism.
Well, Davis liked people who liked him.
Yeah.
Which is just not that unusual, but he loved Hood. It took him some time to come around Robert E. Lee, though. After Cheap Mountain at the very beginning, Lee was put in charge of the coastal defenses and defenses around Richmond.
Yeah.
And they kind of left him there.
Mm-hmm.
But when Lee took over, first thing Lee does is what? He gets offensive against McClellan.
Yeah.
So now Davis is like, oh, I got a guy who's going to fight offense. I've been fighting defense for this entire friggin' war. Now I got a guy who's going to play offense. I think I like this Lee guy. Then you got the 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got Second Manassas. Holy shit, look at what I got going on here. But then everything kind of falls apart after Antietam. But that's what happens. And so from that point on, in the balls of Lee, if you think about it, he's going to drop a letter to Davis saying, I want to go into Maryland. Before the letter is even sent, he's like, we're going. I don't care what the hell this guy says. We're going. Yeah. We're invading in his mind, we're invading a different country.
Yeah.
Without permission from the head of your own country. That's balls. You got to respect that.
Oh,
and it would have worked out. It would have worked out in a lot of cases. But you have Law Order 191, all that shit that kind of goes into that. But it's that's what happens.
Well, I mean, and get back to the what ifs. That's the one thing I love doing about this. I mean, of course, like my knee-jerk reaction is like, oh yeah, Sherman has the better army, and I'm saying that because he's like a victor in the end. But then when you really sit back to think about it, it's like, no, Hood has the better subordinates, but like you said, he's outnumbered. But it's still going to be a hell of a fight. Davis is terrible commander-in-chief, micromanager.
No, he was a very much micromanager, as was Lincoln. They all were.
Oh, yeah, they were.
And so you have situations where they both kind of outsmart each other. Lincoln really he really dicked over McClellan the Peninsula by sending McDowell to chase Stonewall Jackson. Yeah. Davis is that this story's all, if what I think is right, that Davis did tell Hood to go to Nashville, that's a perfect example of micromanaging. But again, I don't think anybody knows for sure.
I also think that Hood was of the mentality that he was more of the mentality that they had to keep fighting, that it was still worth it. Kind of like we see Davis on his final tour, #escape running from the feds, where he's sitting there and he's like the dog with everything on fire. And he's like, this is fine, as he's giving his these speeches saying like, don't worry, we're going to be fine. I think Hood was more of this kind of like, we can keep going and we might still have a chance. We have to keep this kind of this, whatever it is, alive that we have. Whereas you have somebody like Hardee and Beauregard down in Savannah, who are recognizing the closer Sherman gets, that they can't have any more battles. And I've said this a few times on our lives that I think the reason that Hardee gave up Savannah, one of those reasons was Franklin, and he'd read about Pat Claiborne's death and the death of the other generals. And he was finally like, you know what, we're done, no more. We just have to give this city up. And I think Beauregard saw that too. And they were just, yep, it's time.
Well, Davis was the last one to come to the reality.
Yeah. And I think Hood was hanging on as well to that, whereas someone like, and I think Joseph E. Johnston was the same way. I think that's somewhat
I
in his
I think
generalship in
I think
Army of
Hood
Tennessee.
Hood in his mind felt if they could get some big gigantic victory in Tennessee, if they could take Nashville, that it would somehow rekindle the war. Something. I mean, a lot of these guys, right up to J.W. Booth in Washington, they thought that maybe one flashpoint could happen to reignite the fire that was almost out, and obviously it never happened.
Yeah.
But I think there was a lot of that.
Mhm.
How about Jefferson Davis? He gets caught by a Michigan man, just like those Ohio Buckeyes last weekend, Mary.
Yep.
Michigan beat the piss out of them.
Yep.
Very, very surprising to see that happen. But another guy who fell to the Michigan Wolverines was Jefferson C. Davis.
Yeah.
I mean Jefferson Davis. But that's what's good about it though, is you get to look at these personalities and see how how their mindsets affected history.
Well, yeah, and it's not just military. I mean, Hardee and Beauregard are not just evacuating Savannah for military reasons, like, yes, obviously, but I think there's personal that factors in there too. Imagine you're William Hardee and you wake up one morning and you read in the paper about this horrific battle and you read that your best friend is dead. And if you read Hardee's eulogy of Pat Claiborne, that'll tell you everything right there about how close they were, and I think Hardee had a no more, we're done.
Well, and then he loses his son over there in Bentonville.
Exactly. And that's a tragedy. Like, that's so tragic. You're that close to the end and you've lost your best friend, and then your son gets killed. And his son is like 18 years old.
The worst tragedy, if you think about late in the war, I mean, obviously Sultana's got to be the king. Just has to be.
Oh yeah, Sultana. But
as far as battles go, Bentonville, anybody who died at Bentonville, and give Sherman credit, he they
do kind of half-ass it.
They pull their foot off the gas a little bit at Bentonville, and they do.
Even Howard says they do. And Howard makes a joke. He's like, Slocum got there before me.
Which is, yeah, and if you know Slocum, that's
a joke.
Slocum had,
and I showed up and Slocum was there.
Slocum had two speeds, slow and reverse, you know, and when you get beat by Slocum, that's some of
the jokes in Howard's memoirs are really, really funny. And I read, I got a book recently, and the author said that Howard didn't really have a sense of humor. And I was like, I don't know. I've read his memoirs and I've laughed a few times at some of just this like dry, sarcastic.
He's got a classic New England, dry, sarcastic sense of humor.
I mean, any guy that can tell the story of when he gets ripped by a woman and then that woman shows up and basically says, to Sherman, one of your men was mean to me. And everybody, of course, is going to think it's Blackjack. And then Sherman's like, who was it? We'll punish him. And she's like, that guy.
It was him. It was the one-armed man.
Yeah. And then Howard's like,
and the second the woman left, they all laughed. They did.
Oh yeah.
His old prayer book, Howard sitting there. They go, it was you. He's like, oh yeah. Ned Flanders, you.
He's like Ned Flanders. He's like, well, like what's Ned Flanders saying?
Oakley dokley.
Yeah, Oakley dokley. It was me.
Oakley dokley. Hold on.
Well, the other one is when Sherman and Kilpatrick are talking and Howard's there and Kilpatrick's like, how do you want me to let you know I'm where you need me to be? And Sherman's like, we'll burn something.
Can you imagine you could do that today?
Set something on fire.
Mary, when should I know if you're at the bar? Well, I'll just burn something.
Let's just set something on fire.
Oh God, let's set something on fire.
Well, then I guess Kilpatrick or somebody was having a real shit day or something, and there was this thing. They were in Barnwell. And then Howard was like, well, didn't you call it Burnwell after you left? They started calling it Burnwell.
And what's amazing is you think about this stuff. These guys are, for the most part, were young. These guys were in their 30s.
Yeah, Howard was the youngest corps commander at Gettysburg. I think he would have been 33, 34.
But a lot of these guys, Custer, Patty O'Rourke.
Yeah, Custer was really young.
Henry Burgoyne, Joseph Latimer. I mean, these guys are in their early 20s. Rufus Dawes. I mean, some of the people who helped shape that war, a lot of them unfortunately were killed early. We're in their early 20s. Think about it.
Yeah. Oh, they were
something.
They were very young. We should probably jump off here soon, but I think our first YouTube live was a success. You
think we should stick with this for a little while?
I think we should give it another try. Yeah, I like it's the same format. And I think once people know we're on here, I think we can alternate back and forth as long as Facebook isn't a brat.
There's
but
no way we could do both at the same time.
no, unfortunately, you used to be able to do that, but I
No, I
mean,
don't know. Hell, do I freaking know? But
but
no,
no,
I
think
think it's
both.
cool if some more people could jump on. I mean,
Yeah,
look, not everybody's on Facebook.
exactly. Yeah.
Maybe we should stick with YouTube for a little while.
Oh, hey, John, tattooed historian, just came on here.
Wow, look at this.
Yeah,
Look
John,
at
this is our first time on here.
yeah. We decided to YouTube because
Facebook's being a brat.
somebody spilled coffee on the keyboard, and apparently we couldn't get it to work, so
No,
we had to do
Facebook
this
is
way.
being a brat.
So maybe we're going to stick to this for a little while. So we're jumping off now, John. Unfortunately, it's almost the witching hour here, but maybe
someone said I like YouTube better, but needs word of mouth. Yeah, I think we'll let people know. Tony said this works for me. So just while John's on here, tattooed historian. He's got a great like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook as well. And we were on his we did a live stream with him at Gary Owen where we talked about Maine at Gettysburg, and that was really awesome. And John's like he was a Tilden guy, which is awesome. 16th Maine.
He knows 16 is better than 20. But but for the people who are new to this, we do this every weekend. Just about every weekend, usually on Facebook Live. But why don't we do YouTube for a while? If people can come over, because like we said before, not everyone's on Facebook for different reasons.
Yeah.
Some people are banned on Facebook, not me, but I have in the past. But we could do this. Everything go on YouTube. We have to advertise it better up, but we can definitely do that. We can definitely have fun with that. But definitely check out the Tattooed Historian. I think our video of the three of us at the old Gary Owen's still out there somewhere.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, no, that was such a fun discussion, and John is such a great person. Like really, like history is, he's big into artillery as well. That was what he talked about on our Facebook Live.
Yeah, the artillery is good. We talk about guys like McGilvery and talk about Greenleaf Stevens, and he did a lot of stuff on that first day of Gettysburg. So that was a good time. So definitely check his stuff out. And he's a good dude. He's a good friend.
Yeah, he's actually on, I think it's Twitch quite a bit, which we have a Twitch channel, but
I don't even know what Twitch.
It used to be like a gaming thing, but I know John has connected with a lot of different people who are into history on there, and that's like another avenue to explore too. But like
I see him talk about Twitch a lot, and I'm not.
And I know he does some live streams where he has some historians on and they talk about their top 3 different ones. And I think he's doing one, or he just had one on Christmas movies, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, he's a good dude. So, all right. So why don't we stick with YouTube for a while? Maybe this will be our new thing. Venture off into new things, Mary.
Yeah.
We stumble into something else, so that's pretty cool. We'll have to just do that. So, all right. Well, off we go. So we got some fun stuff planned for next few episodes. We got to get them on scheduled. So we're gonna do some things. I believe. I don't know if I'm getting myself in trouble. I think our next episode is going to be Robert E. Lee after the Civil War.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's the next one we're going to be doing. So, I think we'll be recording that probably next week or soon. So, anyway, so have a good day, everybody. We'll definitely get that. Definitely do that. So we appreciate the support you give us. We're almost on episode 100 of our actual real episodes. So
we're getting close to there. I just want to. MJ said, for those here that are new, Darren and Mare are great. Follow their podcast and page. Thank you, MJ. And for anybody on here, MJ has Gettysburg These Honored Dead as a Facebook page. She portrays Pauline Cushman for Living History, which is awesome. She's all about telling her story. She's awesome at what she does. Thank you, John. John said follow all the Civil War Breakfast Club socials. Thank you.
Yes, so in our everything we do, there's none of the Patreon stuff. We don't do any of that. So
we get that people do Patreon, but we couldn't. I don't know. It's not something that we wanted to do because we want to keep this free for everybody, and not that there's anything wrong with Patreon. People do it, but we just were like, let's just keep it like this.
There's no reason to do it. So, all right. So off we go. So, everybody have a great rest of the weekend. Hopefully it's safe and warm and dry where you are, and we'll get ready for the next one. So off we go, Mary. We'll have a great Christmas season is theoretically here. We saw the Christmas tree get lit up last night here in our town, so that was pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Yep.
And so we'll find some stuff to ready to do today. So, all right, Mary, off we go. So everybody enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. We will talk to you soon. So probably another one of these lives, probably on YouTube now, Mary.
Yeah,
well,
I think we'll do YouTube again for the foreseeable future, because Tony mentioned that it's a little bit better quality as well. So
good. Okay.
So that's good to know. Yeah. So we might just kind of migrate over here and really start promoting our YouTube channel a little bit more. Because we put all our episodes on here too. Anybody if it's their first time on here, we have a lot, well, I shouldn't say all of our episodes, a lot of our episodes are on here, and that's the raw footage. So you get to see the bloopers.
Oh yeah. So we'll do that. So we have to find a way to advertise this on YouTube for the people who aren't on Facebook when we're doing this, unless people just subscribe and it probably tells us when they go live. I don't know. How do I know? I could be wrong.
No, you can subscribe and it'll give you a note when it goes live.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, off we go, guys. Have a great rest of the weekend. And we'll figure this out. We'll figure this out. But next episode coming soon. Watch the spot. We will announce the next episode when we do it. When someone feels like recording again because she's too busy with their stupid schoolwork, I'm going to sit here and watch the news.